A beautiful day to you. Thank you very much for keeping it right here on Lookup TV. I don't want to say so much. It is the big conversation, and I'd love for you to be part of it on social media especially. We're live on Facebook and of course also on Twitter and hashtag The Morning Drift. And one of the things we do here is to have real conversations, but not just have them to trigger any kind of emotion. We have it for solution reasons, and of course we are solution focused, breakfast show. So at the end of this conversation, I'm hoping that we can reason together in actually involving our men in this kind of conversation, and that means contraceptives uptake. If I walked into your room right now, just you, the family, and I asked you who is on contraceptives, we know who will say yes, okay? It's probably the mother. Yeah, but I'm not sure men uptake contraceptives. I'm also not sure if they have, any contraceptives, specifically formulated or designed for them. But even if we look at the ratio, I think ladies would have more of the options. But do the young women know what contraceptives do to them? Do they have the information to make the informed choice on whether to take it or not? Let's hear what the law says, and also let's hear from our nutritionist on set what this does to you, how it changes you, and why you should actually be informed. And as a man, what's the role you play? All right, we're talking about this with, of course, Fatma Mohammed, founder of Wellness KE.
Conversation.
Yeah, we're looking forward to a very, very, candid, conversation, and it's good to have you looking all beautiful as always.
Thank you, you too. Thank you so much.
And of course, the advocate of the High Court of Kenya, Jasper. How are you today?
I'm okay, thank you, and thank you so much for having me to join Fatma, at least to also hear from a health perspective.
Yeah. We're actually very honored. Very few men would have accepted
to have a conversation, yeah?
Especially after everything else that is going on in Kenya.
Yes.
And yesterday's women marching against gender-based violence.
Yes.
But you see, violence comes in different forms.
Yeah.
Surely.
It could be also being, violated in the sense of the man makes all the decisions and what to do with your body.
True.
That is also violence. And
Yes,
so we really want to start from, how we got here. Why is it a need? To actually have, contraceptives in the country, because in the traditional times, I'm not sure it was a conversation. We had several children and millions of grandchildren, I would say. Yeah. And families were huge. We must have started from somewhere. Yeah. Why do we need contraceptives? What are they anyway? Maybe I'll start with Fatma.
Yeah, well, I'll say that contraceptives are available for both men and women. It's just that women have more options, as you've put it. And I think it's almost like it was set for women the moment that they, maybe get a male partner and they start thinking about having a family, starting a family. It becomes their responsibility, a woman's responsibility. But just, to your point, there are contraceptives available for men, like vasectomy is one form of natural contraceptive and sterilization, which I'm sure men are not very happy about that one. Not many of them are really interested in going down that route, which is why they want women to take contraceptives. So to your question, why do people or women take contraceptives? The main one, as we know, is to prevent pregnancy, basically. And there are other reasons why women would use contraceptives. For instance, women who have certain health complications like hormonal imbalances, like PCOS, where they are not able to have regular menses, they don't have their periods. Whenever they go to a gynecologist, majority of them are put on contraceptive pill. So they take that so that, because it does release certain hormones into the body, so that it can now put them into that process of having menstruation. So that's one other reason why a woman would take a contraceptive. Some of them also take contraceptives to also deal with certain health complications like acne and painful periods. They're put on contraceptives. But for this part of the conversation, I know you mainly want to focus on, preventing pregnancy. And so for women, there are options that are out there. For instance, the contraceptive pill which is the most popular.
Yeah.
And statistics are showing that over 100 million women worldwide are on the pill. Most of them don't have enough information. It's probably maybe their sister used to use it, their mom used to use it, the aunties, and so they start using it. You also have an intrauterine device, the IUD, which there's two kinds. There's one that's hormonal, which releases hormones and changes the body's hormones so that you actually don't end up having that process of producing the egg so that it can be fertilized. And then you also have a copper IUD, which has copper ions. Basically, it just releases ions. It's like a T-shaped device. It's fixed. It's intrauterine, meaning inside the uterus. It's fixed in it and releases copper ions so that it acts as a spermicide, basically. If the sperm enters, it's almost going to be killed so that it doesn't do anything. You have the diaphragm, you have the injection, you have the patch, and
those
all
are all
these.
for women.
These are all for women.
Okay.
But what women need to understand is that there are two kinds of contraceptives. It could be non-hormonal or hormonal. Now, the most important thing for you to know as a woman is you have to know your health history. You have to be aware of your medical history so that you don't have any kind of hormonal issues or health complications.
All right.
Because, you know, it could lead to any to further complications when you are on the contraceptive.
Yeah, because I want us to come back and talk more about that. So
Yeah.
most people do not get to really understand what other impacts it would have on them. They don't know about their family health history or anything of the
Yes.
sort. It's just, this is the goal, and this is what I need. Daktari, you check if my blood, is it matches this or that. I really don't know how that works because we have an expert on set. I want to ask you a very, you know, from what she said. She said men wouldn't opt for the type of contraceptives that have been set aside for them, but you're the man here. And I know that's not a legal question, but you're a man, so maybe you can speak for the men.
Sure, I can do that. And before I speak as a man, I think legally speaking, we also need to clarify.
Okay.
I think within this context, when we talk about contraceptives, we are looking at contraceptives in the narrow sense. So contraceptive, the medicine. But you can also look at it broadly and actually argue that a condom is actually another form of contraceptive in the broader sense.
I believe
and,
so.
and to that extent, then you will say that men are usually almost 50% plus one, the participants, because most of these condoms are then the male condoms are the ones that are hugely available and very typically popular. But I'm just throwing out there so that we also have a balanced conversation as we look at this role between the male and the female. But why is it that men are hesitant then to participate? I think it's hugely out of misinformation. And she has even brought up a topic that you said we'll discuss later about health history. You see, the typical Kenyan does not have access to a medical officer or even a clinical officer. A typical Kenyan would only go for the typical common diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and so on and so forth. And these others are treated as quote-unquote luxurious diseases that you do not need to seek medical attention, and like the same way to the medical information. You know? So if our women could be able to drag us to see these doctors and they explain to us that, you know, this is a good thing for you and these are the effects and this is how to play with it, I believe then more and more men will be able to
So
participate.
you're talking about the women should, I don't know if you use the word drag.
He said we need to drag the men so that they can be able to, you know, follow along whenever a woman is going, maybe let's say for a checkup, or they're going to see their gynecologist, right? So that they can discuss maybe contraceptive options. Bring your male partner along so that they can be able to know. They can also ask questions maybe so that you guys can learn something together.
My question, however, is does this conversation have to be initiated by the woman? If you are in a, you know, a marriage setup, for example, a relationship, is it not a concern for the man as well to have a conversation around, are you willing to, you know, be on contraceptives, or are you not willing? Does it always have to come from the woman?
I think certainly the male should also originate the same. And in fact, when it comes to the question of birth control and even deciding how many kids you want in the family, I believe it's a joint decision, really. That you have to agree mutually and say this is the number that we want and this is how we want to space it. So I think in the same context, males should also sort of originate that. But, you know, we sort of stay in the back burner because we say, okay, the assumption, which is misguided, is that these are processes happening in the woman's body, really. So can she at least decide first and tell us how we support and participate? But I think it also helps for men to be proactive.
Okay.
And initiate that. I mean, as any other husband who's caring to this lady, you need to also take an initiative.
Yeah.
And perhaps even in cases where your woman is unaware and you are aware, you have the information, then you need to be the provider of that information.
Yeah.
And even suggest the right doctor to see, you know. And
I like that you brought that up because you're not just talking to families in the urban settlements. And most of the times, if you go back to the grassroots, I'm talking about Ukana, Wajir,
Yes.
you know, somewhere in Alego, in Kisumu, you find that the woman is back there, but the man is probably traveling a lot, working.
More
so who is exposed to the information?
Yeah, it's the man. And also, there's a very, very important point you mentioned about the condom being, you know, the most popular, and also men use it more often. But it's not because men are doing more in using that. It's because the female condom is there, but it's not as effective as the male condom.
Okay.
So because of that, women actually have to go with what is more effective, which is the male condom. So it's not necessarily because women don't want to use the female condom.
Okay.
It's because if they gauge in terms of percentage, the male condom would be the one that actually prevents pregnancy and also goes further to prevent sexually transmitted infections. And also something else that's important, when you mention the fact that there should be proactivity, you see, we need to come from a place of compassion where you have a partner, care about them. The same way you care about your car, your item, your job, care about that person, because a woman's body goes through several processes. From the moment she's a girl and she hits puberty, she's going to have to deal with menstruation. She's going to have to deal with that period of, now she knows she's at her reproductive age. Many changes happen with her hormones. She's going to have to deal with pregnancy, which is different for every woman. Some women go through, you know, shock, and some women actually, you know, have explained that after one pregnancy, they were never the same. After pregnancy, they are going to go through perimenopause. Before they get to menopause, there's changes. Then there's menopause, which is the mother of all changes.
And I hope the men are following.
Yes.
Because this is just, and did you know this thing?
I'm learning a lot.
So that's just one woman, okay? And this same woman is expected to be a woman. She's expected to respect herself. She's expected to work and bring home, you know, money, because now women are working. She's also expected to take care of the family. She's also expected to be a wife and a good woman to their partner. And at the same time, she's also supposed to handle everything that's going on in her body. She doesn't have the right information, remember. She has to go out there to search for this information. If you can just try and just do a quarter of the job and just seek the information and then meet each other halfway, it would be better. Because I feel like for years, women have had these huge responsibilities, and they keep on being, you know, piling up as years go by. And now we're super women now. We don't even, we're doing it all.
Now you're doing it all, including heading the family.
Exactly.
And of course, we want to talk.
I will not answer that.
Okay, maybe we should let you.
Please do.
No, I don't want to answer that about heading the family.
Yes.
I will leave
you
it
want
for
to keep it on
another day. Yes.
Okay. And when we're talking about, you know, there are certain challenges here and there. We've mentioned what is going on within her body. But you mentioned earlier the misconceptions. You did not go into detail. And I'd love to understand, because maybe they don't understand. Maybe someone watching back at home takes it as a fact until we demystify it and say this is actually a misconception. Maybe either of you or both of you can give us a bit of this misconceptions around contraceptives today.
I think people are always worried about you'll hear women tell each other, like, you know, maybe they were on the pill and then they gained so much weight, or it brought many complications.
Is that a misconception?
To other women, it could be a misconception, which is why it's important we talk about the health history, your medical history. Because me as Fatma, I have my own medical history. I have had fibroids and I've had a blood clot. So I have high estrogen levels. When I go to see my gynecologist to talk to him about contraceptives, if he suggests a contraceptive pill, which is hormonal and releases estrogen and progesterone, I have to tell him that I already have high estrogen, so that's not an option for me. So as a woman, you have to know your medical history. And then also you have to know your family history, because maybe as Fatma, I don't have any complications, but maybe my mom had, or my aunties have. Because if they do, then genetically I'm predisposed to having complications. So if I'm sitting there with my doctor and they suggest a certain type of contraceptive, I need to say no, because in my family there's history of ABCD.
All right.
Then they can, you know, cancel out some of these. Okay, so I know that majority of the times as women we worry about what it's going to do to our bodies, like how we are going to look, basically. Some women say they complain they get acne, other women gain weight, it causes mood changes. But you have to think about, in the long run, what happens to your body internally, because there is such a thing as estrogen cancers, which are cancers that are caused by high estrogen, like breast cancer and things like that. So think about your health first. And then now think about what it's going to do to, you know, your appearance, because that's the most important part.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the greatest misconceptions.
Yes.
And I like the way he's listening.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand, if you just, you know, we've had a lot of, we're going to come to the legal part of it.
No worries.
But first, let's just have a gender, you know, discussion. And I'm looking at how many times we've had men use patriarchy to force women into certain, you know, type of contraceptives.
Yeah.
Either force them in them or force them not to have them. And I'm wondering if this kind of conversations ever come up, you know, among men when they are either raised or, you know, ushered into manhood, because that's what she said.
Yeah.
You know, she's talking about, as women, go check your history, but do men have this conversation with the woman's health history, for example?
Certainly there's a problem there, and men in their locker room talks would probably commenting how a woman's weight has suddenly changed.
Yeah.
And speculating already and saying, you know, possibly she's on contraceptives, you know, and that is something that really needs to be addressed, because then this woman feels stigmatized.
Yes.
And possibly would not proceed on that line of contraceptives. You'd find that women keep changing the regime of contraceptives they use, depending on the outcome they see and the reception and hostility they face when they use it.
Okay.
So that is something that is live, and yes, again, I'll just go back to what I say in terms of just informing the men and sort of being champions for contraceptives one way or another. And I just want to also add another key, and this could be a misconception, it could be a reality.
Yeah, we will.
Is on the question of the success rate of the contraceptive. You know, another woman would be telling the other woman, or a man would actually be saying authoritatively that so-and-so was using it, but you can see she's currently pregnant.
So it did not work.
It failed, yes.
Yeah.
So why are you going through this route with all these side effects? And the success rate is so low. And I think, I'm not the medical expert here, but I guess again, as the success rate perhaps also depends on the medical history. I don't know.
It does.
And therefore, those will go back to the same issue. Go and consult a gynecologist to then understand your medical history. And I just, perhaps also to add that there's a woman who actually sued the Aga Khan Hospital for a failed contraceptive, and the judge who handled the matter actually awarded her damages. I'm not trying to encourage that, but I'm just saying that then, of course,
but you're giving us options. You're saying it is okay to actually sue if something didn't go right?
It did go right, yeah. If at all, it is because of the negligence of your doctor, because then the doctor should give you proper medical advice based on the set of facts and circumstances in your case, which goes back to the medical history.
Of course. And you've trusted them to actually do this for you. Because when you think about it, when you sit down with your doctor, you actually have trusted them with your life. You explain to them your medical history, then they're going to run some tests. Maybe they'll do a blood test, a hormone test, and things like that. Then after that, they make their own, decision based on the information you've given them. And you trust them. So if it happens that it doesn't go the way it should, it's not your fault as the woman, because you've taken that step to, you've taken the correct steps. It should be successful.
You want to add something?
I just wanted to add that, again, I also know that these gynecologists also explain to the woman. And that's why we were saying that come along with the man. They actually explain to the woman. Will the man
accept to come along?
The mechanism. True. I personally, I would accept. If I was invited, I would accept. And the doctor would be explaining very keenly that, look, this kind of contraceptive, these are the side effects that are known, these are the misconceptions, and this is the success rate.
Yeah.
This is what possibly could cause.
Okay.
If you go to the emergency pill that you mentioned,
Yes.
I mean, it's always known that you should take it within the first 12 hours, then it will be more effective.
Yeah.
If you push it to 48 hours, then the effective rate goes. So
Lower.
of course, even as you take it, then you start waiting another
Yeah.
2 weeks to see, go do a test and say, oh, we are out of danger, or we are still with, you know, that kind of thing. So if we are more informed,
Yeah.
if we are more advised, if we provide this information the same way we are providing a lot of information on YouTube,
Okay.
then I believe that this conversation will only get better.
Fatima, allow me to take another legal angle, just with the Wakili here, and I'm looking at what I mentioned earlier on, abusive partners,
Yeah.
either taking that right away from you, because I believe it's a right, and I don't know under what, you know, article or constitution quotation chapter it is, but I just want to make it clear for partners that are watching this morning why it is a right for a woman or a man to choose whether they use a contraceptive or not.
Yeah.
It's actually a right, and it's been protected under the 2010 Constitution. Not word for word, but the 2010 Constitution says now everybody has a right to health.
So
In
it's
fact,
under
you can
health.
actually sue the government for failure to provide healthcare services, at least basic healthcare services. Now, unfortunately, contraceptives will not be contemplated under basic healthcare services, as it were, but they're still healthcare services, as it were. And therefore, a woman has this right to decide whether they want to use it or not. Because what we also have to understand is, even from the concept of the right to the dignity of the body, the right to enjoy the law, whatever freedoms and rights are provided within the law. As a woman, therefore, one should be able to decide and make an active decision to go for contraceptives or not to go for contraceptives. But I do not want to shove the legal right to women this way, because there is what we say legal rights. Then when you go back to your house and close the door, you're with this man here, who you need to cooperate with in so many other spheres, let alone the question of contraceptives. And the human beings that we are is that we tend to revenge, we tend to take action when somebody confronts us, you know. So I think my view, and I'm not a family relations advisor per se, is that this should be a very balanced conversation, where at least the information is what should prevail, the best information. So where you have a man perhaps refusing, the best thing is perhaps look for a therapist or an advisor to advise you with the facts and with the information. Before then you run and shove the right to reproductive health, because again, you know, it could lead to the breakdown of family in different ways. A man could say, okay, you chose the contraceptive route, so I will go and live with another woman or such a thing.
But Fatma, if it gets to that, if it gets to the point where a man says you've chosen contraceptives and this is a decision for your body, this is you handling 10 children already, and he says it's contraceptives or the marriage.
Can I be honest?
Yes,
I think it's
absolutely.
important for women to just choose themselves. And the reason why I say that is because there's a huge responsibility that comes with being a woman. And I think how God created us, we're also very tolerant. That's why you find that women stay in marriages and situations where things were happening and you're like, but how did you stay? Why would you? Women just take so much. And at the end of the day, if a man chooses to force you to do something that they feel is what is best for them, then you also have to do the same thing that men do. You have to choose yourself. And that's the number one lesson that I feel women have learned now with time. Every time a woman chooses themselves, they're either going to break up a family, they're either going to lose a job, because maybe where they're trying to work, someone is trying to do something to them. Whenever you choose yourself, you're bound to lose a lot. But what you will gain your health, like in this particular situation, because you will make an informed decision. You're not going to be coerced into picking something just because you want to keep a marriage, just because a man or your partner is forcing you to do what they want. Remember, as we've mentioned, there are certain side effects that come with certain types of contraceptives. That's why it's important you know what suits you based on your medical history. If you don't do that, you might have years of being in this marriage, but then what happens later on when you start developing health complications or when you have health issues? Is this person going to stay with you? Are they still going to love you the same when changes come? No, probably not, because they're going to choose someone else. So it's time for you to also choose yourself. I would say the message to women is, when it comes to your health, and this is very serious, you have to choose your health first. If the partner was there because of love, nothing else is going to matter. If they really care about you, it's not really going to be about what type of contraceptive you pick or what job he's going to decide you should do, or if he decides you shouldn't go here and there. Because that's not really love when you think about it. That's control. That's control. So nobody's supposed to control what's going to happen to your body. It doesn't even make sense, because we can't even wake up right now and be like, I'm now forcing you as Anki to do this. And if it doesn't happen that way, we're not friends anymore. That's not a friendship. I'm only with you because you agree to what I tell you. Okay. But it's something that I feel women need to decide for themselves, because their health is what comes first.
All right, and I hope they're following. I just want to take a short breather there. We come back with a more solution or, focus conversation. We've laid quite a foundation there, and I feel very strong sentiments have been put out here, very objective and very positive ones for that matter. We take a very short breather. The big conversation continues shortly. I'll be also checking out your feedback on Facebook and your questions. I know they're really overwhelming. I've seen them. Shortly. Don't go too far away. Well, you are watching the big conversation right here on Look Up TV, and this is the Morning Drift. Allow me to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back on set. Allow me to say good morning to one Chris D. Obayi. Chris Obayi, good morning. Saying good morning, Anki. Great show. And he signs out, signs off with his name, Chris. That's one of a kind. I hardly get anyone sign off with their names and they send in comments. James Kenya saying Fatima is looking stunning.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, James Kenya also saying this is James saying men have zero ideas about contraceptives. And this should change. Let's start with that. What are your comments on that?
I think you should agree with me that is not necessarily factual. Even from the few minutes I've spent here, you know that I'm also a man and I have some ideas about contraceptives. Yes. But I also want to agree with him that there's a lot of misinformation, at least in the male fraternity. And there is this misconception that this is a woman issue. Which is partly also fronted by the women. Because you will find women gathering themselves in groups and discussing about contraceptives themselves. So if we make this an inclusive conversation, both by men and by females, then we'll know more. If we avail this information more, as I said, on YouTube channels, on all social media platforms, and make it a conversation, then of course we are going to fill the information gap. There's an information gap, not only in the male fraternity, but even in the female fraternity. So there's a lot of work to be done.
That's true. And Anki, let me add the fact that there are on my platform Wellness KE, there are men who actually reach out on behalf of their wives, on behalf of their girlfriends. And there's some who, when they see me post something related to maybe painful cramps or things like that, they message you and say, like, my girlfriend goes through this is her number, contact her. So if we never put the information out there, of course, it's, as you said, men wouldn't really know that the information is out there. We're not saying all the men are just disinterested. It's just that there needs to be that active conversation, and also giving them access to this information means they're going to also pass it down to their partners. So that part is really important. And
I'm just going to be talking about a few feedback here. So I like that we started with those kind of remarks. James again says condoms are the ultimate contraceptive. And it says hizi pills ni risky because kuna ma side effects.
I think the reason why he's saying that is because out of all the contraceptives listed, the condoms are usually listed at the very top because they don't just prevent pregnancy, they also prevent STIs.
Okay.
And the only side effect for some people have a reaction to latex, which is the material. But it's not necessarily something that's going to release hormones into your body, because that's the one that, you know, people really fear. And also the fact that there are certain types of contraceptives where you actually have to fix them in like the diaphragm, and they, you know, some women also experience some kind of rupture or some types of issues when they use them continuously, right? So I think because of that, that's why it's the most popular.
Okay,
right?
it's the most popular.
Yes.
And people need to know it's not the only one.
It's not the only one.
It's the most popular.
Yes.
And I think, if I may add, the popularity also comes in terms of the ease of use,
Okay,
and
yeah,
accessibility.
That's very true.
The fact that you just stay and wear and
Yeah.
you're done with it.
Yeah.
You know? Look at the other option men have. I mean, going for vasectomy.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to go for a procedure where your body will be torn apart, and you start thinking, is this really what I want to do?
Okay.
Might I just also just wear and tear? You know,
And that's exactly why we're saying women also think about that. When something is suggested to them, they're also like, okay, this is a contraceptive option that's going to getting into my
so
body.
So women are changing a lot of things about their bodies. So men are being selfish?
I wouldn't say selfish, but I think I learn a lot from men, let me tell you.
Yes.
The way that they put themselves first, I have learned. And it's not to be shady, but I feel like men are very factual and straightforward. This doesn't work for me, I'm not going for it. But for women, we're always on the fence because we're like, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. I also want to keep the family together and stuff. Now, if women also learned how to just make a decision and put themselves first, then we're going to have happy families.
I don't have anything useful to add.
All right. All right, let me just see. Wanjiru Wagosho is asking here, good morning, Anki. Why do some women take so long to conceive after using contraceptives? I think that's for you too.
Yeah, I think it's also because it's like we mentioned, right? Every woman has different medical history, which is why it's important you know about your own medical history, right?
Okay.
So maybe a woman who has been on a type of contraceptive that is hormonal, which is probably the most common, like the contraceptive pill or like the hormonal IUD and the other options. So as we say, these are contraceptives that do release hormones into your body. So they are going to change a certain mechanism or process that is normally natural and normal to your body.
Okay.
So because of that, it's going to actually take a while before it goes back to normal once you're off that pill or that hormonal IUD. It's the same as, I'll give an example, when I had fibroids and a doctor had suggested for me, before we go into surgery, he was like, there's this procedure where I'm going to, you know, you get an injection and then it's almost like it induces menopause, okay? You're not going through menopause, but they're going to induce menopause so that the fibroids shrink, because when you go through menopause, the estrogen dips, it goes lower, so then they shrink. But then the thing is that after you're done with that phase, now they go into surgery and then they give you a laparoscopic procedure, which is not extensive, right? So after you're done with that, you're going to have to wait a while before it wears off and your body goes back to normal. Of course, I said no to the procedure because I had to do a lot of research. And I have to mention I had a male friend who did most of the research for me.
Amazing.
And was like, no, this is not right, because you know, your body will take a while before it goes back to normal. So it's kind of the same thing whereby some women, not all of them, they do end up experiencing a delay when it comes to them conceiving. Yeah.
All right. Gosho, I hope you got your answer to that. Of course, people have also talked about the not using the contraceptives correctly.
Yes.
Overuse.
Yes, overuse,
as well.
Forgetting also, because can you imagine a woman? Yeah, a woman who is on the pill, they're supposed to take it every single day. There's consistency. If you take it in the morning, you have to keep taking it every morning. If you take it in the evening or in the afternoon or something like that. So there are some women who they end up forgetting because life happens. Maybe they forget and then now they have to restart that system, and then now it's not as effective. So because we would like for people to be perfect and do everything as they are told, but then sometimes you might forget, sometimes you might be busy or something. So that also plays a part.
And now I get where you say women go through so much and have to balance around too many things.
You do.
And I'm now talking to, you know, the people, the scientists behind contraceptives, and I'm thinking the options you're giving men which are fewer, they feel they cannot deal with. What if we had the scientists come in and say we have a pill for men and you have to consistently take them
every single day,
and like
every
she's
morning.
saying, would that option be better for you guys?
Yeah, most of us have been looking for that option.
Really?
We can be the ones to take the pill. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think just in the last part of your statement, I think the other thing we can do is to encourage men to remind the women about their timetable of taking these pills. And it helps. Or maybe I should wake up and prepare some porridge. Say, now you use this to take your Medicaid, because it's something that has to be collective.
Teamwork.
And it's because it's something that we are correcting. It's an affirmative action of sorts where you're bringing men on board to participate. Because again, we cannot take away the inevitability that the reproductive system has been designed in the woman, as it were. So if science can come and sort of ameliorate that and have us take those pills, I think I had a conversation around such a development, but it's not yet taken root, really. Having the male pill instead
of the female.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's just the fact that I like the fact that you've said it should be collective, such that the two of you can be able to just work around the fact that maybe you have, for instance, a diaphragm, it's inserted, and then you have a couple of months and you need to remove it and do it all over again. Chances are you might forget. If you already have children, you have to take care of them, you have work and things like that. So if you have a partner that also reminds you, you create a schedule around that as partners, then it's going to work, of course. And again, men, an advantage that they have, they also get things done. It's not that they're going to just make sure that you have it and you do it. And when you do it, because you've already done your research, it works for you, it's good enough for you, then, you know, that's the right direction to take.
I remember something trending on Twitter once about how men should allow women decide how many children they have in the family.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you followed it, and it's part of the family planning as well. Because mostly in the African setup, the man would decide, even if he had the conversation and said, well, I think it's 4. His family and, you know, himself would say, well, I think 6. People said, why don't we channel this to the woman and let her decide, maybe have the final word, and I can handle it.
Since it is her body that's going to be going through pregnancy, the 9 months. I feel like
4. How many months?
I think sometimes it's not even. It should not even be just a woman decision. But should be a science decision. Because we have women who have an history of giving birth through cesarean sections. And I think that, I don't know whether this is a misconception, but the idea is if you're going through CSS, then you should limit the number.
That is very
the
true.
effects increase. So once you are in that unfortunate circumstance, I mean, science should just dictate that you stop at a certain number. Because here now you're choosing the life of the woman who is already alive, vis-a-vis the unborn baby, who perhaps would also die during birth, you know, those kind of things. So I agree that, it should be a joint decision. The woman should take the lead role, perhaps, because then you see she's the one who's carrying this baby. And of course, now we also need to appreciate that there are other options that are coming, where you have the you quote unquote rent a home.
Surrogacy.
Surrogacy. And therefore, if depending on the reasons the woman is giving for not wanting this number of children, then there are other permutations that you can take. If at all you could consider the surrogacy route. I think there's already a proper act to dictate that, you know, because now there's a question of how many parents does this child have, you know, because you rented the womb, then there is the mother who provided the eggs and the father, you know, that kind of thing. But these are conversations that we could have to see how to ameliorate these problems.
And also I like the fact that you've even mentioned surrogacy at the moment. I think it was like about 5 years ago when I was going into hospital in and out. I remember the doctor that I was seeing at that time, he also had a separate IVF clinic, and there was always a long queue. Women were going through IVF, and these are Kenyan women. So it's not because these issues they're not doing it out of selfish reasons. There's some women who actually are suffering. They have health complications. They have to, you know, go through issues like, you know, some fertility issues, and they would want to go through surrogacy or IVF. And I think whenever it comes to issues dealing with reproductive health, people also deem these issues as female issues. If you hear the word gender, you immediately think of women. Okay. If you hear the word reproductive, you immediately think women. But it's because it has been set in such a way that even when you hear someone has gone through gender-based violence, you just think it's a woman. So people always just have this perception, and they don't necessarily want to involve men in these kinds of conversations, which I think we need that, because men bring in a certain, also another aspect of thinking and getting things done, and you need to work as a team so that you can be able to, you know, have success. And when you keep saying
men get things done,
yeah,
in Nairobi, they would also make sure that that is bought. The financial aspect of making things done is another way they use to abuse the women in the grassroots areas.
Okay.
So the woman has to hide and beg the doctor somewhere in Maasai land,
yes,
to please help me. I only have 20 shillings because the husband does not want to listen to that situation. She doesn't make money.
Okay.
So
financial
so are they affordable?
Okay,
There's so many options of contraceptives for women, but are they affordable? Not for the woman in Nairobi or Kisumu City, Nakuru, Mombasa City. That other woman in Maasai land.
I think what's important to mention is the fact that if you and I like to be realistic about relationships and partnerships. If you're with someone that can do something like that, for instance, they know that they have a financial ability, but then they don't want to support you so that you can do something that is for your health, that's already a red flag. I think we can agree that that is a red flag. That's not the type of person that, you know, you should really be with to start off. But let's say, for instance, they were not that way and then they changed and became this type of person. At the end of the day, there are organizations that can be able to help you.
All right.
And these institutions exist because of that. Right. And I think it's important also to let women know about such organizations. And also,
can you mention a few? If you can.
I wouldn't necessarily mention a few. Okay, I can give an example of somebody that I knew who was going through something quite similar, and when they reached out to me, I remember I thought, like, how am I going to help them? I reached out to a few doctors that I knew, and they gave me a certain number, and they were like, tell her to call this place. This is an organization, they can be able to assist her. They also assist you with a lawyer pro bono so that you can be able to make decisions and things like that. So I feel like women shouldn't necessarily feel caged that you know, this person is deciding for you. It's just a matter of, are they exposed to the right steps and the right information? Okay. Yeah.
I think if I may add on that, on the question of affordability, I think the buck actually stops with the state.
With the state?
With the government, because this is a question of access to health services.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way health services have been framed is that it is the basic health services that have been given preference. So when you go to our level 1 to level 4 hospitals, you would hardly get resident gynecologists, for instance. How many are they? And you know, the cost of training a gynecologist is quite high, because they are medical officers. Post being a medical officer, then they have to do their masters in that space for a number of years. So that is an issue that government, from a policy level, needs to address, because we need to have a situation where every single sub-county as an in-resident gynecologist to see these women and give these women these services. You see, when you see I think the organizations you speak about most likely will be non-government organizations.
Yes, they are non-government.
The role of NGOs in Kenya is actually to fill the void that the state has left.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
That already tells you there is a problem. So even before placing the mistake or the challenge at the door of the man, we should look at the bigger man behind the man, and that's the state. But having said so, again, when we get to these family budgets, you know, the way families are budgeting is they sort of prioritize the key areas, and the key areas, any family would quickly say food, shelter, and education. Those are priorities, and we are not playing with that. But then when the woman starts saying, oh, but I have I'm feeling some challenge.
Yes.
Could you give me like 5,000 to go and see the gynecologist? Because a typical gynecologist will ask between 3 to 5,000.
Yeah.
Before you walk into that door. So the accessibility in terms of affordability is actually a key issue that needs to be addressed in different ways. And perhaps what men need to also do is to frame this issue as a key issue. I think the health is more important. Even than perhaps the food that you're taking, because then if your health in the long run, then it might cause more challenges. But you'd agree with me that healthcare in Kenya is not at its best. Let's just leave it at that level, because there are a lot of other issues that we could interrogate.
That's true.
All right, and thank you very much for bringing that up. I will bring up, other cases where women have been so vulnerable to the point that these purported, quote-unquote, gynecologists or doctors have caused them more harm and then are at large. I don't know if you followed some of those as well. But of course, Sesmo Times is saying, good morning, Anki, who is at high risk of not using contraceptives?
Who is at high risk of not using?
Yeah, I'm not, maybe just the way you understand it, you can respond
I
to
think
that.
maybe they're asking between the man and the woman who is at high risk, maybe, in terms of the partners. That's how I understand the question. But I think a woman, because she's the one who's going to end, she's trying to prevent a process that happens in her body. Because if it was both men and women that go through pregnancy, then we would say it's equal, but it's not. It's the woman who has to stop a process. She has to stop the menstruation, she has to stop the production of the egg and all that. Everything, all of that. So I would say she's the one who would be at risk. And also she's still at risk, depending on the type that she chooses, if she does not make an informed decision.
Do you agree?
I look at it differently. And in fact, I think that question should not arise. Because then it tends to suggest that the consequences can be divorced from the couple, so to speak. And because I believe, look at the main reason to prevent birth. So if you have the birth, even if it's the woman who's going to be the immediate bearer of the pregnancy, it is something as a man of the family, we have a guest coming whom we need to take care of moving forward. So really it still is a family issue, still is a family problem that you have. And even if you are lying next to that woman who is your wife or your girlfriend for that sake, if she's not happy, if she's not at peace, if her health is not stable, it affects your psychological well-being. And
So
I would just run, just run an analogy when it came to questions of divorces and division of matrimonial property. One of the things that the law has now found is, even if a woman did not contribute financially, they have a right to a part of the family wealth. Why? Because they gave you the space to go and pursue this wealth as they were taking care of these other issues, which are issues of pregnancies, birth control, and so on and so forth. So the law has now developed further to even appreciate that these non-monetary contributions that women are giving also contribute to the overall growth of the family, including the growth of the family wealth. So to that extent, then, the consequences will be borne by both parties, at least how I look at it.
And what I'm gathering here is that matters contraceptives or these conversations are not gender biased.
No, and they shouldn't be.
And they shouldn't be. And men should be, part of the conversations. Just don't let your woman give her money, let her go to the hospital, never find out, follow up. I like when he said druggers. So women also do not fear your spouses. You reach out. Do you have time for this? Do you have time for that? And I hope they're really picking. And we are about to wrap up, but Signora Zuri is saying, good conversation, Anki and the guests.
Thank you.
Big up to you and the whole Look Up TV crew. # morning drift all the way. Good way to start the morning. Yes,
Thank
and
you.
we hope you are a young lady picking what you ought to pick and run with it. Edwin Kipkirui, and I like that the feedback is also men and women.
And women. That shows you people are more exposed to this conversation.
And he's saying, that is Edwin saying, good morning, Anki. Following closely, ask Fatma what type of contraceptive is more safer, he means more safe, and effective health-wise. The daily pills, monthly injections, or implants, or rather just abstain.
Okay, so there's no proper answer to this one. I can say based on the long list of contraceptives, as I mentioned initially, the condom is at the top. Because it does not release any kind of hormones and it does not cause any further complications in terms of changing chemical or mechanical processes in the body. Now, if they don't want to use that type of contraceptive, then the first step is for them to find out the woman's medical history. So this is where now they go and see a gynecologist. He should go with, you know, his girlfriend. They see the doctor. And then the doctor is going to run some tests. They might probably send her to an endocrinologist who is in charge of, you know, checking your hormone levels. And then they're also going to be asked about family medical history, if there's any. If there are, then the doctor will list the different contraceptive options, and they can make an informed decision based on that. Because a contraceptive pill might work for one woman, but then an IUD might work for another woman. This is only because of, you know, their health history. And that's why it's important for you to know when you're choosing a contraceptive, it's not just for you to prevent a pregnancy. It's to also understand that your health comes first, and it's a moment for you to now consider options about taking care of your health. If you understand that there might be certain types of side effects, then you understand that you need to learn ways to balance your hormones, like eating more cruciferous vegetables, taking care of your health, checking your weight, and things like that. So, yeah.
I was going to ask you very intentionally about the dieting. Yes,
the dieting part is very important. Do you know the health industry and the wellness industry has really glamorized like diet, and they feel like there needs to be this certain thing that you're going to do, and then you're going to lose all this weight. Just make sure that when you look at your plate, half of your plate should be actually vegetables, cruciferous vegetables like cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower and all these greens, because these foods actually help in balancing hormones. And as women, our hormones are like a tipping scale. Right now, you might be seated here and we take a blood test and your hormones might be at par. On your way to go see the doctor, you might sit through traffic, you go through some stress, you release cortisol and you release other hormones, and then when they check, it's different. So it's a tipping scale. Because of that, you're not necessarily going to be able to control your hormones fully, but you can be able to do certain things like eating healthy, half of your plate having vegetables and all these other foods. Make sure that you eat good quality protein, which is healthy source of protein, whether it's going to be lean meats and white meat and fish and things like that. And also making sure that you have nuts, seeds. Make sure you do a liver detox, which is really important. Drink green tea, hydrate with lemon and water, because this is going to help you in flushing out excess hormones and cleansing your body. And then activity, because women who are more susceptible to issues like fibroids, PCOS, breast cancer and things like that, most of them are overweight. Yeah, so it's important for you to have an active lifestyle, to eat healthy, de-stress, and then when you do that, at least whenever you introduce any kind of contraceptive, it goes at par, because you already have a strong foundation.
Amazing. So build that foundation from your diet, and just what I have picked really from you is knowing my medical history and knowing how my body works.
Very important.
And always being ready for that contraceptive by just making sure I'm healthy anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's really beautiful. A way to close the remarks. Unless you have anything else to say, I'll come back to you.
I would say it's very important for women to actually get a hormone test. Most women don't get to do that. So whenever you see your gynecologist, your next appointment, ask them for a hormone test so that you can know. There are women who are not, they don't get to see their periods for months. Maybe they have PCOS and they don't even know. Maybe testosterone is high, your androgens are high. So yeah, making sure that you get a hormone test.
Do a hormone test.
Yes.
Just don't go for malaria. Maybe I should do a quick COVID
and don't wait for until the pain is too much. Yes. So make sure you do that. And also follow Wellness KE. We have all the information to give. Follow Wellness KE. So
start following Wellness KE for more information. And of course, Wakili, for your final remarks. I feel like Wakili tried very much.
Thank you.
He has really represented the sober men.
Yes.
Karibu for your closing remarks.
Asante sana.
Men taking up the conversation.
Thank you. And I've learned a lot. I think from that conversation, I will now take more cabbages.
Yes.
I usually put the cabbages aside, but now I will eat it more. But I think the big takeaway here is let's mainstream the conversation on use of contraceptives. Let's also lobby policymaker and government to take these as a prioritized item. And of course, I'm a student of science, but my country sometimes fails me in that, because we don't do research. And even if we do research, we leave it for the academics to share the research within themselves and put them in their CVs. If we could have done research and done analysis and said, okay, in Nairobi County, these are the contraceptives in use, and these are the long-term effects after 5 years, after 10 years. The children who are born out of these mothers, this is how they are, you know, then we could learn a lot. So I think let's be students of science. My fellow men, let us walk along with the women in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've been amazing panelists I've had. And this wasn't an interview, really. From what you have experienced back at home, this is basically a conversation. And I loved it. I learned so much as well. And I noted that there are men who also would rather wake you up and prepare some porridge.
So that you can
to help. But of course, right here, we are ending the big conversation. We have a great, amazing lineup for you for the Culture Umbrella. So sit back, enjoy, relax, and trust me, I won't tell you what to expect. Just wait. We'll be right back. This is The Morning Break.